Good afternoon, everyone. Today is March 16th, 2022. This is the voting session for the Education Subcommittee of the House Ways and Means Committee. I want to welcome everyone here. Just as a reminder for all of our visitors and advocates, please make sure your videos are turned off. Make sure you're muted. And then also, if there's any questions from our members of any of the bills, we will call on our advocates and on our visitors to be able to answer any of those questions and concerns. Again, this isn't a public hearing. This is to be able to answer any questions that might arise during our debate and discussion of these pieces of legislation. In front of us, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of legislation in front of us today that we're going to take up. We're going to start off first with House Bill 472. This is a bill that we have not discussed, but we heard about a month ago. Alice, you want to tell us what this bill does, and then I can cover the amendment.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill, as it came in, requires that each school in the state adopt Title IX regulations on sexual assault. It requires MSDE to set guidelines for those Title IX regulations in consultation with local school systems. And it also requires MSDE to establish a database for sexual assault allegations.
The amendment removes a lot of this section here, and it adds language on informing the students, faculty, staff, and parents of who the Title IX coordinator is for that school and the process for filing a sexual misconduct complaint. That's the amendment and the bill. So any questions on the bill or the amendment? Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just took a quick look at it, and I'm a little behind the 8 ball. Does this sexual complaints between anybody in the school, between teachers, teacher, student, student, teacher, whichever they want?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Delegate Hartman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I may have missed something here. So what I can't figure out what we're trying to, what's the purpose? What made this become a bill?
I think right now there isn't really, with our students don't know the avenues they can take to make complaints of sexual misconduct within the classroom. Our teachers know a lot of that stuff, but our students don't, and our parents don't. So what this is to be able to provide a clear resource to our students and our family and the parents on where they can file misconduct complaints, sexual misconduct complaints to the administration. And they also have a Title IX coordinator that does a lot of this work. And so some folks just don't know who those Title IX coordinators are. And so this identifies who that Title IX coordinator is.
So is the purpose so that somebody doesn't reach out to law enforcement, it's handled at the school level? Is that?
I think a lot of instances where students just don't know where to go. Right. And so this bill would give them that opportunity. And then that Title IX coordinator would then contact the appropriate people in order to once there's research done or once the report is reviewed on this investigation is completed on it.
So then whose ultimate decision is it for law enforcement to be or not be involved?
Alice, you want to take that?
Yeah, so I think the Title IX process is not just about sexual assault. It can also involve some lesser things that aren't criminal, like some sexual harassment or something that's going on, or just like mistreatment in general in the school. So in those cases, it would be about that process. However, a lot of what does go on is the sexual assault process. I think that there are federal regulations that govern how the Title IX coordinator interacts with law enforcement. This also doesn't prohibit anyone from going to law enforcement in any way. It's just under federal law, every school has to have this. Every school that accepts federal funding has to have this sort of process in place. And this bill is just making sure that the students, parents, and faculty are aware that that process is in place and how it would work.
You're muted, Delegate Hartman.
Thank you. I just glanced down, saw Mr. Williams. Is the Association of School Boards good with this?
Mr. Williams.
Good afternoon. The MABE did not take a position on this legislation. We do a lot of Title IX training through in-house and outside counsel of school systems. It has been a hotly contentious issue from the Obama administration through the Trump administration in the 180-degree shift in federal policy on the standards for Title IX and the requirements for local school systems to adopt policies aligned with those federal changes. That pendulum is now swinging back to a more, I would say, victim-friendly or responsive approach, whereas during the Trump administration, it shifted to being much more balanced, which I'll put in air quotes, with regard to the interests of the alleged perpetrator and alleged victim of sexual assault or discrimination, harassment, and the like. And so if the legislature wants to adopt this state approach and overlay, if you will, to the federal standards, it seems to be being done appropriately in this case.
I would just say, Mr. Williams, that as amended, this bill is no longer adopting a state approach. It's just having the schools inform various stakeholders about the approach that's in existence, that is the federal approach.
Well, that is much more aligned with what I described as being a changing federal landscape. So thank you.
Delegate Hartman.
Okay, I think that answered my questions. Thank you.
Good. Delegate Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I might be confusing this maybe with another bill, but when are the parents informed? So if a child goes to someone at the school and makes an allegation, are the parents informed right away?
So when we heard this bill, there was a lot of discussion about that. An amendment was proposed to not inform the parents. As amended, this would no longer touch that, would not answer that question. So it would be up to the school's Title IX policy, I believe, which is implemented under federal law. I don't know exactly if the federal regulations speak to the notification of the parents, but as amended, this would not address it one way or the other. Would not require notification and would not prohibit notification as the suggested sponsor amendment would have.
Okay.
Thank you. Delegate Guyton.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. I appreciate the fact that we're discussing the bill today too. I think this is a really important issue, and I want to make sure that we do what we can to protect all students involved in this situation. I know that Ms. Jordan, I think, is on the line, and she sent us out some amendments. I don't know, I haven't had a chance to look at them, so I apologize to you, Ms. Jordan, for that. I wondered what your feeling was about this and whether this was something that your organization would support. Haven't had a chance to study it the way that I would like, so as much as I could hear from everyone would be helpful.
Ms. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Delegate Guyton. I appreciate that. I've not seen the new amendments. I did want to say that the amendments proposed previously, I just want to clear up any misconception. It was not to prohibit telling parents. In fact, we always anticipated that parents would almost always be informed. It was if there was a case where that would actually endanger the child, they just wanted to give a little bit of delay and wiggle room for the schools. And so I sent around something that made that even clearer, saying that you're not going to have a delay unless it would actually be harmful to the child. And that was a concern that was raised over in EHE as well. It sounds like the amendment that the chair described really takes out much of the guts of the bill and just leaves it with a referral to Title IX, it's certainly still an improvement. And this is in no way a substitute for the criminal justice system. You can always have Title IX and criminal justice, but there are things that Title IX requires that the criminal justice system can't address at all. Things like requiring that the school investigate sexual harassment that's short of sexual assault, things that require the schools to provide some accommodations to kids. So I mean, certainly it sounds like the bill came in stronger than perhaps the amendment would leave it. but still, we often have one Title IX coordinator for a large number of schools. So at least letting parents and students and families know that Title IX is an avenue for them would be an improvement, although again, not as much of an improvement as the bill came in with.
Thank you very much for that answer. It helps a lot.
And apologies for mischaracterizing that amendment.
Ms. Jordan, you haven't seen the amendments yet. Would you like an opportunity to see the amendments to provide some comments to us?
Yes, I would, Mr. Chair, if that's possible.
Yeah, sure. Let's hold the bill for now, and then we can send those out to you. You'll get an email from Sam, my legislative aide, and to all of our advocates, just so you have a copy of it. And we'll love your feedback prior to our next meeting, which will probably end up being tomorrow, fortunately.
That would be fine. I'll do my best to even get it back to you by the end of the meeting today. I know you have a long list there.
Cool, perfect. That'd be great. Thanks. All right, guys, we're gonna hold that. We're gonna hold that. But I just want to note that this is just, we're talking about notifying. In this bill, the amendment strikes the bill and adds language in for notification of the Title IX coordinator for that school and the process in place for filing an actual sexual misconduct complaint too. So that's what it does now. It is a step in the right direction, I think, and I think we should discuss it more. We'll move on to House Bill 665. You all should have received an amendment not too long ago. Let's discuss this bill a little bit more. This is Delegate Jackson's bill on air quality testing. Alice, you want to tell us what this bill does and the potential amendment?
Absolutely, sir. So the bill as it came in required that each county board retained the services of a qualified indoor air quality investigator, and on receipt of results of an air quality test, posted those results on its website, submitted them to MSDE, and did so in a written and clear to understand manner. There are a few amendments that are proposed here. One is a sponsor amendment to remove the word retained and instead say utilize. Additionally, rather than submitted just to MSDE, the results of an air quality control test will be submitted to the Interagency Commission on School Construction as well. And instead of posting them on the website, they will be made available to a member of the public who requests them. Additionally, and with a little bit more significance, the Interagency Commission on School Construction is given the requirement to adopt regulations establishing minimal air quality standards in public schools. And they're given a certain date by which they have to do that. After that, each County Board of Education must report to the IAC on their own air quality standard plans that and how they fit with the IAC's plans, how they plan on implementing those standards, and a schedule to do so. That information will be compiled by the IAC and reported to the General Assembly by the 2024 legislative session.
Thank you. Any questions? Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at the beginning, it says they retain the service of a qualified indoor air quality investigator. Does this mean it has to be someone outside the system, or if they have someone within the system can someone within the system meet that qualification standard?
Under the amendment, it would say utilize rather than retain. So,
okay.
And it doesn't require that they do that. It's just when they're conducting a air quality check that they utilize the standard of a professional. So just making sure that it's the proper person who's doing it.
So either in-house or retain, as long as they have someone who's qualified. Okay, thanks.
Delegate Polakovich-Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I'm reading the amendment correctly, basically the amendment doesn't make any specifications about frequency of testing. We're leaving that for the regulations to decide that. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, that was easy. Thanks. All right. Any questions on the amendment? Any comments? Do I hear a motion on the amendments?
I'll move favorable on the amendment.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? On the bill as amended.
Move favorable, Mr. Chair.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded by Delegate Ivy. All those, and any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. House Bill 665 passes. Thank you, everybody. We'll move on to House Bill 766. This is Delegate Kaiser's bill, in which we discussed in the subcommittee before. Last time we discussed this bill, there were some amendments that were, I'm gonna ask all of our advocates to turn their videos off and keep muted. And if there's any questions of the committee members, we'll call on you. And that was stated in the beginning of our meeting. So there was amendments proposed that were being considered, that we thought were being considered, but no longer. Alice, do you want to just remind the body and the public what this bill does as is?
Yes, there is actually an amendment which would change the effective date from 2022 to 2023. But yeah, this bill says that subject to the state budget, the educational costs for a student who is enrolled in a residential treatment facility will be covered by the Department of Health, I believe, rather than either by the Department of Human Services or the parents, as the current practice is, which I think, as we discussed last time, that Delegate Guyton brought up, there is an issue right now where, if I understand this correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Delegate, that if someone needs to be placed in a residential treatment facility in order to have their educational costs covered, they either have to momentarily turn over custody of their children to DHS to cover those costs, or they have to pay out of pocket. So this bill is trying to rectify that issue.
Okay, any questions on the bill or the slight change of date in the amendment?
I'd like to move the amendment.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. On the bill as amended.
Move favorable.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed. House Bill 766 passes. We'll move on to House Bill 812. This is a Montgomery County delegation bill. It's about data desegregation. We have not discussed this bill here in our subcommittee yet, but we did have a public hearing on it not too long ago. Alistair, you want to tell us, and we do have a delegation letter in support of this bill. Alistair, do you want to tell us what this bill does and why everybody shouldn't be on it already? Or why it should be a statewide bill?
Yes, I believe we have a bill that might touch on similar topics that at some point we will discuss. This says that in Montgomery County, the Board of Education, when it does data collection, it includes a category for each racial and ethnic group that constitutes at least 5% of the students enrolled in Montgomery County, so that, and that when there are racial disparity comparisons made, that those categories be used. So it's ensuring that as the population changes and as there are groups of different students, that those student groups are looked at in any sort of data collection and any sort of data comparison that's done in the county. And I believe the delegation was unanimous in support.
Got it. Alistair, can you define what it means by saying including the white category?
I think that refers to people who are of the Caucasian race. I think that might be a defined term within their current school definitional setting, but perhaps we could do a clarifying amendment there to make sure that I think the goal with that is to say that if someone is ethnically Hispanic, they should be included as a separate group and not part of the white group. But I would like to just make that lowercase. I don't love the uppercase white. but
Correct.
this is me.
Delegate Hartman, if you don't mind, I'm gonna go to Delegate Blokovich-Carr since it's from her county's bill, if you don't mind, just real quick.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Delegate Hartman, for your deferral. Yeah, really the intent behind this bill was just to make sure that when our school district is reporting out information about student achievement and whatever else, that we're getting like disaggregated data so we can really see what's going on within each group of student.
I do want to clarify though what this including the white category is. I was being facetious, but also
Well, I can't answer. I mean, it was a very specific instance. I know the instance that led to the genesis of this bill from one of my colleagues. And in that case, there were times when our school district, they usually do disaggregate the data. They had done a briefing for our delegation where they were doing select focus groups where it was groups that students that actually were struggling. Some of those were racial demographic groups. Some was like ESOL and farm students, special education students, and they had aggregated some of the racial data into white, into like a catch-all category of white and other students. So I think that was perhaps where the origin was. I think we could do some cleanup here and we'd still be fine. Really, it's that 5% threshold is what was the important piece, I would say.
Yeah, no, I think some clarifying will be great. I think we good. Cool. Delegate Hartman. Thank you, Delegate. Thank you, Delegate Blokovich-Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, it's not asking for any particular data to be collected, but whatever data is collected, if a subset gets to 5%, if a minority group gets to 5%, then they're broken out and shown differently. So we wouldn't have a grouping of other of 25% or something.
That's exactly right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Alistair, you can we should we hold it to make kind of a clarifying amendment?
If you would like to, I mean, to me, that's like a technical amendment that's just fixing the language. But if you would like to see it, I think we could, because we're going to meet tomorrow, we can meet tomorrow.
Delegate Blokovich-Carr.
I mean, one simple amendment that maybe we could do on the fly here is just to delete out that phrase, including the white category. So it'd read as at least 5% of students enrolled, blah, 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 that is separate from any other category. We probably don't need to actually reference one particular racial group.
Fair enough. Okay. Is everybody okay? We don't typically do floor amendments unless, but I think in this case, I think we're all pretty clear. Does everybody feel comfortable with that?
Yep.
Cool. Okay. Do I have a motion on the amendment?
Move favorable.
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment say aye. All opposed? On the bill as amended.
Move the bill.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of the bill as amended say aye. All those opposed. HB 812 passes. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, we're going to move on to a bill that we've heard before, that we discussed before in this subcommittee, is House Bill 836. This is Delegate Lehrman's bill, the Elijah Gorman Act. It's about the emergency action plans. We do have a pretty lengthy amendment, and we got some amendments from the actual sponsor of the bill too. Alice, you want to tell us what the amendments do?
Yeah, so the amendments would change the way that this is constituted. Instead of having these specific requirements that we talked about last time, each middle school and high school is going to have a site-specific emergency action plan for AEDs, the defibrillators, and for the preseason practice heat acclimatization. And that refers to another section in which it's stated that training must be provided for athletic staff on those topics, that no longer is the AED required to be on the field, but just within walking distance, and AEDs are already required under current law to be at a school. The venue-specific emergency plan must contain certain things, including particular heat acclimatization guidelines from the lead to the cooling of students and that are that everyone knows where they are and so on. And that information must be posted on the school's websites so that parents and students will know going forward. Before, there was a requirement that everything be reported to each county board and to the State Department of Education, including the specific locations of all the devices, the cooling device, the AED on the field, and also that all the training be reported. There's also a requirement that students had to undergo training before they could participate in athletic events, and those provisions have been removed at the request of the bill sponsor.
Okay, that sounds like a lot to digest. Any questions on the amendments?
I'd like to move favorable on the amendment.
Okay, is there support for a second on the amendments?
Second.
Okay, it's been probably moved and seconded. Any discussion or questions on the amendments? In all those in favor say aye. All opposed. The amendments pass. On the bill as amended, do I hear a motion?
Move favorable.
Second.
It's been probably moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none on the bill as amended, all those in favor say aye. All opposed. Okay, Hartman and Rose are opposed. House Bill 836 passes. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, we're going to move on to House Bill 805. Delegate Ivy.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move unfavorable.
Okay, for a second.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded on the unfavorable. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. All opposed. Hartman, Rose, and Hornberger. Thank you. House Bill 805 fails. Is moved unfavorable. House Bill 314.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move unfavorable.
Thank you.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded on the unfavorable. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. All opposed. Delegates Hartman, Rose, and Hornberger are opposed to the unfavorable. With that, that bill moves unfavorably. With that, ladies and gentlemen, committee, we're going to meet again probably tomorrow to take up a few more bills, including House Bill 472 and a few local bills that we've been asked about a lot. But we're going to move them. And if you have any questions, please let me know.